Hello, long time no see. Welcome to day 103 of my art development series. So if you've been following along, I've actually missed uploading the last couple days, which is kind of a little bit antithetical to what I've been preaching this whole series about never missing a day. But what I want to say in my defense is that I actually have been drawing. What I haven't had time for is actually recording the videos and uploading the videos. So today it's like a super beautiful morning here in New York City, like the sun is out, it's really great lighting. So what I'm gonna try and do is actually catch up on the filming of the introductions and kind of like me talking about what I did during these days. Because I've actually drawn pretty consistently every day this week, and I've actually really enjoyed my art drawing practice, but I just haven't had a chance to film these introductions and film these videos and kind of edit them together in a way that I can upload them. But that ends today, and I will catch up on any of the missing days. And so the first kind of thing I wanted to talk about today was a idea that I went back to that I had actually already explored one time very recently that I really enjoyed, which is doing what I'm calling like these like fundamental type of drawings. So in the background behind me, you can see kind of the result of these, and I'll have it also playing in the time lapse next to me. And what I started doing recently is finding these references online that just have like 3D rendered objects, and they're all simple shapes. So it's either cylinders, boxes, spheres, and then every once in a while there's like a pyramid or a trapezoid, but they are all simple shapes. And they all have one single light source in kind of an intense way. So you can see like where the cast shadows are coming from in these drawings, and kind of how they're forming the shapes on the drawing. But you know, while this might seem like a kind of a trivial exercise to just draw simple shapes and just draw the shadow pattern from one light source, it's actually been super helpful for me in terms of like growing and developing my understanding of how to render light and shadow. So there's this like super important idea that I hear now. I've heard this probably 10 different times at this point from like 10 different artists. So if that doesn't let you know like how important it is, then I don't know what else will. But it's this idea that when you're doing a drawing, you need to keep your shadow areas in the dark, and you need to keep your light areas in the light. Like there should be separation between these two zones. You can have variation within the lights, and you can have variation within the darks. But still, the darkest dark should be lighter than the lightest light. Like these two things need to be kept entirely separate. And so this is actually the kind of thing that I've been exploring with these simple studies. And you can see actually in the one that I did today, I was really trying to push that and keep the darks in the dark area and the lights in the light area. And just this one simple kind of strategy, or this one simple property, by following that kind of mindset, you can actually create a rendering that looks pretty realistic. It's actually like pretty impressive how real it looks when you just kind of follow this one guideline. So this is something that I'm definitely going to be exploring, like as I continue to do like more complex renderings, like if I'm doing a portrait or if I'm doing a figure. Really trying to be aware when it comes to time to block in tone and kind of add value and add shadow, that I keep my shadows dark and I keep my lights light. And there's actually an expression that's like stuck in my brain. So I went to an arts high school, and one of my favorite art teachers used to always say the sentence all the time. She used to say, keep your darks dark, or keep your darks dark, and your light lights light. And what it means is like, if you have a dark, whatever the darkest in the dark value is, it should be very dark. And then likewise, when it comes to the lights, whatever your lightest value is in your lights, it should be very light. And if you do that, you get this kind of full range of values. So you have like your lightest lights, you have your darkest darks. And what you can do is make sure that you can separate these things very easily. If you keep your lights and your darks like close together, it becomes very difficult to separate them, because you just don't have any, if all the values are similar, then you just don't have anywhere to go. And there's something else I wanted to talk about. So you can see I made this like little like 3-value panel here. And I was kind of experimenting with this idea of like, okay, a light, a mid-tone, and a dark. And I think I've realized that actually making a drawing with 3 values is probably gonna hurt your approach when practicing this kind of idea, because it's hard to tell where that if the dark is clear, the light is clear, but then where that middle value sits is kind of more unclear. So I think when I actually start to do like compressed value studies now, I'll always use 4 values, but it will be 2 distinctly dark values and then 2 distinctly light values and a separation in between them. So rather than kind of have a smooth gradient from dark to light in my value range, I would actually prefer to keep them as separate as I possibly can. And this is something that I'm kind of, playing around with a little bit right now, and you'll kind of see emerge in some of these drawings that I'm doing recently, and probably over the next month or two. So I think that's everything for now, for this idea of like separating your lights and shadows. These exercises are amazing, and I just want to kind of make a recommendation to you that if you're trying to kind of get better at rendering, I think you should try and approach and do some of these really simple shape studies. They take shockingly long time. In fact, I would say each of these drawings took almost as long as, let's say, like the portrait block-in. And probably in total, this page took me as long to draw as a normal like portrait drawing would take, including the block-in and adding in all the values. Just because you really have to be careful, and you have to be aware, and you have to be very focused, and you have to think a lot. There's so little that because there's so little in there, like you only have 2 objects and they're simple shapes, if you make mistakes on them, it's very obvious. It's like kind of like this paradox that like the less you have, the more obvious your mistakes are. And sometimes actually I've heard it said like when you do paintings that have a ton of faces in them, like let's say you're doing a crowd of people, like 10 different people, you can actually make mistakes more easily on each of those faces, and the eye just doesn't perceive them as much because there's so much detail that's in the portrait. So it's like you actually get away with more mistakes when there's more detail. And then the same kind of logic, you get away with less mistakes when there's less objects. So I hope this inspired you to draw today if you haven't already, and I hope this inspires you to try something like this because I think it's a really great exercise.